3,000 years ago, a vast complex stood here. It was a Hebrew temple said to be the resting place of God. His spirit was believed to dwell within a dark chamber known as the Holy of Holies. In it was also one of the most mysterious artifacts of the ancient world, the Ark of the Covenant. It was said to contain the sacred words of God, the 10 Commandments, inscribed on 2 stone tablets. Anyone other than the high priest entering the forbidden sanctuary would meet with certain death, struck down by powerful supernatural forces. Why was the Ark such a feared and dangerous object? After 5 centuries, the temple was destroyed on the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av. It would be replaced by another, more elaborate structure, but it too would fall centuries later on precisely the same date. Was this mere coincidence or divinely ordained? What rituals took place within the temple's inner chambers? And what secrets still linger here, waiting to be discovered on Jerusalem's Temple Mount? These are but a few of the mysteries of the Bible. If these stones could speak, what stories would they tell? More blood and tears have been shed over this barren hill than anywhere else on earth. Yet to many, this is the holiest place in the world, Jerusalem's famed Temple Mount. 3 great religions took root here. Today it is crowned by a shrine built more than 13 centuries ago, when Islam first came to the Holy Land. But long before that, another building stood in its place. A Hebrew temple erected at the dawn of the Christian era. Built by Herod the Great, the temple dominated the city. It was a sprawling complex, more spectacular than anything that existed anywhere else in its day. It was the temple known to John the Baptist, and it was where Jesus himself once prayed. Great mystery enveloped it. Though a house of prayer, it was unlike a modern synagogue or church. Except for priests, no one entered the building. It was rich in symbols, many of them difficult to explain. Yet every aspect of the temple, every ritual practiced within it, had meaning. Scholars now believe that the temple was a physical expression of something profoundly spiritual, rooted in the mystical interpretation of the Bible, the Hebrew Torah.
The Torah, the Bible, the 5 books of Moses, is referred to as a blueprint to the actual world. God looked into the Torah as a blueprint and then constructed his world. So if we actually look carefully at the world around us, we should be able to find God manifest, God realized, God's purpose being explained. The temple itself, or the Temple Mount, is at the center of that purpose.
The innermost chamber was known as the Holy of Holies. It was there where the Spirit of God was believed to reside. Only the high priest himself was permitted access. For anyone else to risk entry was to invite certain death.
God would kill them on the spot. The lightning bolt would strike them dead, quote unquote. It was a danger. Because if you're dealing with that level of integration, you need to have the knowledge. You need to have the training. It's like walking into a nuclear chamber unprotected.
The most important site in the temple was the Holy of Holies, which people were not allowed to enter except for the high priest, who would go in there once a year on Yom Kippur, on the most sacred day of the year. And there he would pray for the redemption and the repentance of the people. But no one else was allowed to enter that place.
On Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the high priest would pray for the pardon of the nation's sins committed during the previous 12 months. According to ancient Jewish tradition, before entering the Holy of Holies, a scarlet-colored thread and a gold rope would be tied to the high priest's waist. His heart had to be pure, his conscience clear, before entering the sanctuary alone. Holding burning incense, he would utter the mystical name of God, a name once revealed to Moses and secretly passed on only to the priesthood.
There is one name that's spoken about. No one knows the name, but it's made up of 72 letters, and it is the name of God. And supposedly, if a person knew these 72 letters and could verbalize them, he would command a tremendous amount of power. And that's because God's power, as we know of it, is manifest through words. We all know the power of words. You can kill somebody with your words. And God created his world through words. He spoke, and the world came into being. So his name is very powerful.
Hours would pass as crowds outside anxiously awaited news of the outcome of the high priest's prayers. Had they been forgiven their transgressions? Or did God withhold his pardon? Would they receive a sign?
We're told that in the temple was a scarlet rope made from wool. And if the high priest was successful and the other parts of the service had been successful, that red piece of scarlet wool would turn white. And it was a clear indication that God had forgiven them and that they were now with a clean slate, able to go on into the new year.
If the high priest's heart had not been pure, his prayers would go unanswered. The thread would remain its original color, and he would have forfeited his life. The gold rope would now be the only means to retrieve his body from the Holy of Holies. For all its mysterious perils, Herod's temple was not the first to rise on this spot. This was its third incarnation, a later development of a much earlier structure, a temple embracing even stranger rituals. It was built by King Solomon 1,000 years earlier. Other than a few tiny artifacts, no major archaeological remains have ever been found of Solomon's temple. Yet the Bible leaves us a graphic description of its design.
And the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, the length thereof was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits. 1 Kings 6:2.
The temple was divided into 3 chambers. The first was a short porch. The second, a main hall 66 feet deep, And finally, there was the secret Holy of Holies, a dark, windowless room exactly 33 feet square. These proportions are believed to have been based on a mystical interpretation of the dimension of the heavens. The building was filled with symbols, many impossible to interpret, yet each had deep significance. The Holy of Holies was the focal point of the entire complex. Built of stone quarried from nearby hills, the walls were paneled with cedar wood, overlaid in gold. But what was it that made the room so dangerous? The Bible tells us it was because of what it contained, the very reason for the temple's existence. A strange wooden box plated in gold, surmounted by a pair of golden cherubs. This was the Ark of the Covenant, an instrument of awesome power. There are many who believe it still exists, its vast supernatural energy once again waiting to be unleashed on the world. When we return, the people of Israel changed the course of history by constructing the Ark, and we follow the journey of the holiest yet deadliest object of all time. Mysteries of the Bible will be right back. The story of the Ark of the Covenant begins during the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt. It will one day find sanctuary within a temple that will be built for it in Jerusalem. But it will undergo a lengthy and circuitous journey before it reaches its final destination. At Mount Sinai, Moses receives the 10 Commandments from God. Now the people are told to construct the Ark, to contain the tablets of God's holy words.
Make an ark of wood, 2 cubits and a half the length thereof, a cubit and a half the breadth, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. Overlay it with pure gold, and make upon it a crown of gold. Exodus 25:10.
Once built, the Ark begins to exert supernatural powers. The people are forbidden to touch or even approach it. Why?
The Ark of the Covenant is far and away the most mysterious object described in the Bible. There's nothing else quite like it. A tremendous aura of mystery and power surrounds it. It was surmounted by the figures of 2 cherubim. Now, this is a word that's much misunderstood in the West today. When we say cherubim, we tend to think of chubby, happy little infants. The cherubim of the Ark of the Covenant were anything but that. What comes across from the descriptions is the figures of 2 fierce, almost demonic figures gazing at one another across the lid of the Ark. And in many of the accounts, particularly from the extra-biblical sources relating to the Ark of the Covenant, we find descriptions of fire passing between the cherubims, of sparks, of some kind of energy passing between them, and of a cloud and a bright light surrounding them.
To this day, explanations of the Ark's powers still elude scholars. Yet the Ark becomes a venerated but much feared object. The people of Israel safeguard it in a tabernacle, a tent pitched wherever they camped during their 40 years of wandering in the desert. In addition to the Ark, 3 other objects are reportedly kept within the tabernacle's inner sanctum. The staff used by Moses to part the waters of the Red Sea, the rod of his brother Aaron, the man chosen to become high priest of all Israel, and a bowl of the mysterious food known as manna.
This was that food that God had fed the Jewish people for 40 years in the desert. Every morning they would wake up and find their food waiting for them. When this happened, God instructed Moses, take some of this manna, place it in a bottle, seal the bottle, and it is to be kept next to the ark for an everlasting memorial.
Despite the miraculous daily provision of manna, as so often happened during their years of wandering, the people become dissatisfied. Manna is not enough. Remembering their days as well-fed slaves in Egypt, they begin to crave other foods.
And the mixed multitude among them fell a-lusting. And the children of Israel wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? Numbers 11:4.
And so begins a new chapter in the story of the temple, as the people turn to animal sacrifice. Yet sacrifice was not new. It was an ancient ritual practiced throughout the Near East since time immemorial, as a token offering to God. But now the act of dedicating an animal to a deity takes on a double purpose. The carcass now also becomes food.
Today, we tend to have a very negative view of the idea of sacrifice. It seems to us barbaric. Of course, the truth is most of these sacrifices were eaten by the priests and Levites. Today, we also slaughter and eat animals. The only difference is that we don't have the same sense of sacredness that our ancestors did. When you sacrificed an animal at the temple, you knew this was an awesome undertaking. You were sacrificing a life to God, and you recognized the spiritual character of that act. Today, it's wrapped in cellophane, and you buy it at the checkout counter.
Animal sacrifice becomes a regular feature of daily worship. But throughout its practice, it is a troubling ritual, often criticized by the great prophets of the Bible.
To what purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me, saith the Lord? I am full of the burnt offerings of rams and the fat of beasts, and I delight not in the blood of bullocks or lambs or he-goats. Isaiah 1:11.
If you turn to the first chapter of Isaiah, you can read it very clearly. Isaiah says, I don't want all of your sacrifices. There is a tradition that when the world is redeemed, the only sacrifice that will remain is the thanksgiving, the Todah, which significantly was made of bread, not of animals. And so the menu will change. It will be perhaps a restoration of that primeval vegetarianism that we read about in the book of Genesis. And it's understandable that the eating of the consumption of other living creatures is a different business from eating what grows.
But animal sacrifice will continue to play a major role in the religious tradition of Judaism. Later, it will find its greatest expression in the temple in Jerusalem. Another ritual that begins in the desert is the use of the so-called ephod. This is a strange square-shaped breastplate worn by the high priest. Made of solid gold, it is encrusted with 12 semi-precious stones, each one inscribed with a Hebrew letter. It is believed to have been a mysterious and powerful device capable of foretelling the future.
Part of the power of it was that sewn into the vest or the apron upon which the breastplate was placed was the name of God. Now that's something no one ever saw, but it was there. And somehow this mystically powered that if a question was posed by the high priest, as per the instructions of the high court, as per the request of the king, that something should be found out, should we go to war, should we do the following, then the letters inscribed on the 12 stones, different letters would light up. And it was up to the high priest to interpret or put those letters together.
Practicing mystifying rituals and tapping into forces we may never understand, the people of Israel and the Ark eventually reach the land of Canaan, the Holy Land. When we return, a young king chooses a sacred spot on which to build the temple, a spot believed to be the very birthplace of the world. Mysteries of the Bible will be right back.
We now return to Mysteries of the Bible.
It is 1140 before the Common Era. After wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, the people of Israel have crossed the River Jordan into the Promised Land. Because of its lethal powers, priests take the Ark of the Covenant to a settlement called Shiloh, where it will remain for almost 2 centuries. It is then that Israel's second king, David, decides to move it to his new capital city. Jerusalem will become the Ark's final resting place, but not before a temple rises here on the hill known as Mount Moriah. It is said to be the mount where Abraham came to sacrifice his son Isaac. It is believed to be the place where Jacob dreamt his dream of a ladder rising to God's kingdom. And in Islamic tradition, this is where Muhammad ascended to heaven. All of these events are believed to have taken place on one specific spot, on a rock known as the Foundation Stone. It now lies beneath a great dome built here 1,300 years ago. But what is it that makes the Foundation Stone so sacred and revered?
Foundation stone in Hebrew is Even Shetiyah, and it is so called because that verb is interpreted to mean where the navel of the world was set. It is the foundation stone, the keystone of the world as we know it. And this gets us into a major mystical theme, sometimes referred to as Axis Mundi, as though the whole world were revolving around this one point.
In medieval times, Jerusalem was pictured on maps as being at the center of the world. But of course, Jerusalem isn't anything like the center of the world geographically. Geographically, it's really very trivial. But it shows what a tremendous place this small, obscure, out-of-the-way city began to play in the hearts and minds of human beings, because this was the place that God had chosen. And if God chooses a city, it makes it immediately and forever the center of the world.
The task of building the temple falls to King David's son, Solomon.
Behold, my purpose is to build a house in the name of the Lord, my God. As the Lord said unto David, my father, saying, thy son, whom I will set upon thy throne, shall build a house unto my name. 1 Kings 6:5.
But the task of building God's new house is a difficult one. Nothing like it has been attempted by the Hebrews before. However, Solomon has established trading links with a wealthy Phoenician kingdom to the north, a nation well-versed in construction techniques. Their ruler, King Hiram, is on personal terms with Solomon. He offers to help Solomon with the project. It is 967 BCE. It will require 7 years to construct the temple, but it will become one of the wonders of the ancient world. 10,000 of Hiram's men labor to cut timber for it in the forests of Lebanon, while in Jerusalem, 80,000 laborers toil as stonemasons and craftsmen. The temple becomes the focal point of the city. But because of the lethal powers of the Ark, not even Solomon himself is permitted into the sanctuary. To pay for the project, the nation has been divided into 12 heavily taxed districts. This has split the people's allegiance to their king, and it is not long before the 10 northern tribes secede. What was once a united kingdom now becomes 2 kingdoms, Israel in the north and Judah in the south, with its capital at Jerusalem. Without a temple of their own, the northern tribes turn to paganism. In 730 BCE, they will be invaded and exiled by the Assyrians. They will never be heard from again, remembered only to history as the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Despite the Jerusalem temple, those in the south also waver from their spiritual path. Many rites and traditions have become corrupted. The people begin to worship pagan gods. Prophets rise up to speak out against this trend, but to little avail.
Will ye steal, murder, commit adultery, swear falsely, and burn incense unto Baal, unto other gods, stand before me in this house, built in my name, and say, we do these abominations? This house called by my name has become a den of robbers. Jeremiah 7:9.
Few heed the prophets, but in 587 BCE, their warnings take on horrifying meaning when the armies of King Nebuchadnezzar sweep in from the north. The entire nation is taken into captivity and exiled to Babylon. The temple itself is set alight and razed to the ground. In the ensuing chaos, the Ark of the Covenant mysteriously disappears. The date is the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av. When we return, the same date, the 9th of Av, inexplicably features once again when an even more terrifying event takes place at Jerusalem's Holy Temple. Mysteries of the Bible will be right back. Jerusalem and its Temple Mount have always been steeped in mysticism. When the temple stood here, it was even the scene of a miracle still recognized today. For the past 22 centuries, Jews throughout the world have celebrated a holiday known as Hanukkah, the Festival of Light. Its origins go back to the year 167 BCE. Following their return from Babylonian exile, the people have rebuilt their temple. But now the Holy Land is under the domination of Syria. An edict forces the Jews to erect idols to honor pagan gods. The Syrian army occupies the temple to enforce the laws. But the Jews rise in rebellion and drive them out. However, On entering the building, they find it plundered.
Upon entering this defiled building, they found not a single container of pure oil to light the famed menorah, the famed candelabra. And they found just one unbroken, sealed container. They had enough for just one day because it was bottled per day. And it was the high priest who had to do that service, who had to actually light the candelabra, symbolic of God's wisdom in the world. And they lit it, and one day's oil burned for 8 days. And this was seen as such a small but significant miracle of God's love for his people.
The miracle of the lamp that burned for 8 days redeems the temple. But for centuries, something fundamental has been missing from the building. Ever since the Babylonians ransacked it more than 300 years earlier, the Holy of Holies has stood empty. Israel's most sacred object, the Ark of the Covenant, has long since disappeared. Scholars relentlessly debate the mystery of its fate.
The Old Testament contains detailed accounts of the treasures that were looted from the temple by the Babylonians, that were carried off to Babylon, and that in due course were returned to Israel at the time of the building of the Second Temple some 50 years later. The Ark of the Covenant is not mentioned at all in any of these detailed accounts. One would suppose that if the single most precious and important and sacred object in the Judaic world had been taken or destroyed by the Babylonians, it would at least be mentioned in some way. There would be some reference to it, but instead there's a deafening silence.
The disappearance of the Ark is one of the Bible's most compelling mysteries, instigating a search that continues to this day. Over the centuries, the Holy Land would be occupied by many foreign powers. But none would be as formidable as that which comes at the dawn of the Christian era. Now the country has become a province of the Roman Empire. Herod the Great now sits on the Jewish throne. He is an unpopular king, a Roman sympathizer, and a man whose Hebrew origins are questioned by many of his subjects. Herod nevertheless wants to impress his people and leave his mark on history. He embarks on an ambitious building program that will transform the face of the Holy Land. Of all his projects, none is greater than the one he has in mind for Jerusalem. Here he plans to replace the aging temple with a vast new structure, the likes of which have never been seen before. The new temple will be built on the site of the existing one. Work begins in 24 BCE. It will take 46 years to complete. 10,000 workmen are assembled for the task. But how will construction be carried out on the Holy of Holies? Only priests may enter its vicinity. Herod's solution is simple. 1,000 young priests will be trained as carpenters and stonemasons. They alone will work inside the new sanctuary. To accommodate the building, a vast stone platform is laid out on the Temple Mount, doubling the area. Like Solomon's temple, it contains 3 inner chambers, including the Holy of Holies, now but an empty room since the disappearance of the Ark centuries before. But Jerusalem is a nervous and troubled city. The people are divided in their relationship with the Romans. Religious ritual has become corrupt. Sacrifices are offered not only to the Hebrew God, but to the entire pantheon of Roman deities. Driven by greed and profit, temple worship has been reduced to little more than big business. It is into this environment that a young man from Nazareth comes. Appalled at the weakened moral fiber of the people, the one known as Jesus addresses the multitudes gathered at the temple.
Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all of them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves. He said unto them, This house shall be called a house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. Matthew 21:12.
Religious decay and political disunity have split the fabric of Jewish society. But the people eventually rise up in revolt against their Roman oppressors. It is the year 66 of the Common Era. The Romans are brutal in their retaliation against the Jews. Once again, blood flows violently. Then the inconceivable happens. Centurions attack the temple itself. The entire complex is reduced to ashes. History has repeated itself, for mysteriously it is once again the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av. It is the exact date of the destruction of Solomon's temple 500 years earlier. Why? Was it mere coincidence? Or was the divine responding to the conduct of his people?
The temple was destroyed because of sinat chinam, which means baseless hatred. And you can see in the politics of the time that there was a lot of empty hatred of Jews for one another as they fought with all sorts of different factions splitting off. Jews and the surrounding peoples hated each other. That's what led a modern rabbi to say, perhaps if the temple was destroyed with baseless hatred, we can rebuild it with baseless love.
Today, Jews pray at the Western Wall for the redemption of the temple. This is the only remaining fragment of Herod's once magnificent complex. But for some, there is another, more elusive prize. An artifact far older and more mysterious than mere brick and stone. When we return, the search for the ancient world's most sacred object, the Holy Ark of the Covenant.
Mysteries of the Bible continues.
The temple in Jerusalem was originally built for one specific purpose, to safeguard the Holy Ark of the Covenant. Yet after the Babylonian attack in 586 BCE, the Ark mysteriously vanishes, never to be heard from again. Throughout the centuries, there have been many quests to find it. Modern-day archaeologists continue the search. Yet, where to look?
The text doesn't say what happened to the ark. And when the text is silent, the imagination runs riot. And all through history, from that point on, people have wanted to know what became of the Ark of the Covenant. And this remains one of the great mysteries of the Bible.
Of all the theories proposed over the years, few are as compelling as that which concerns an Israelite king by the name of Manasseh. On the throne in Jerusalem before the Babylonian invasion, Manasseh is an evil influence unto his people. He even introduces idol worship to the temple.
Manasseh seduced them to do more evil than all the nations whom the Lord destroyed. And the Lord said, Manasseh, king of Judah, thou hast done abominations and made Judah sin with idols. 2 Kings 21:9.
As though in response to God's rebuke of the Israelites, the Babylonians invade. The ark mysteriously disappears. Or does it? The most popular new theory of its possible whereabouts is that of historian-explorer Graham Hancock.
Around 650 BC, during the reign of Manasseh, something completely unprecedented happened. Far away in Egypt, on the island of Elephantine, close to the modern city of Aswan, a Jewish temple was built. There are unmistakable, unambiguous, clear-cut restrictions on where you build a temple. There's only supposed to be one temple. That's the temple in Jerusalem, and its raison d'etre is as the house of rest for the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. Suddenly, at exactly the time that the Ark most reasonably and realistically can be seen to have disappeared from the Temple of Solomon, we find another temple being built in Egypt.
The ruins of the Hebrew temple on the island of Elephantine in the Nile are frustratingly silent today. Yet their very silence seems to conceal a secret. Could this place have been built by priests escaping the corruption of King Manasseh? And if so, could they have brought the Ark of the Covenant here?
I think that temple on Elephantine was built for the same reason that the Temple of Solomon was built. It was built as a house of rest for the Ark of the Covenant. And the evidence suggests that a cult of the Ark of the Covenant was pursued on Elephantine for another 200 years or so after that period. Then, in 410 BC, the Jewish temple on the island of Elephantine was destroyed.
But what happened to the Ark? Hancock believes he has traced its roots after its removal from Elephantine Island. According to his research, it was taken down the Nile to an island on Lake Tarna, where it was hidden for many centuries. Finally, he is convinced that it was secretly carried to the city of Axum in modern-day Ethiopia, where it may now rest under tight security in this church sanctuary. Could this be the final resting place of the most coveted and sought-after artifact from the ancient world? As in the days of the Jerusalem temple, only one man is allowed into the sanctuary. Today, he is the one who bears the title of Guardian of the Ark. To all others, entry is forbidden. We may never know the answer to this most elusive of biblical mysteries. Meanwhile, prayers continue in Jerusalem in the hope that both the Ark and the temple in which it once stood will be resurrected. Yet there are those who look no further for the Ark than the Temple Mount itself.
We're told by classic commentators that it's actually buried somewhere beneath the present site of the temple. In caverns and caves that exist beneath Jerusalem, somewhere in there, this Ark of the Covenant is hidden. Right before the destruction of the first temple, we're told that among those who were responsible, Jeremiah the prophet spirits away, takes away the Ark, and takes away some key things, and they hide them. Hide them for some later time when the Jewish people and the world will one day be worthy of the reconstruction of the temple.
For 3,000 years, this hill, the legendary foundation stone of the world, has been the focus of millions. Though untold blood has been spilled here, this is above all a place of hope and a place of everlasting mystery. For this is where God's house, the Holy Temple, once stood.
This is the Biography Channel.
You want to be yourself, but you're not allowed to be yourself.
This is the Biography Channel.
I was just beside myself with anger and disappointment.
This is the Biography Channel.
I'm the only actress he knows you have to pay to keep your clothes on.
Reality meets personality, only on the Biography Channel.
Biography Channel. What a cunt!